Hi, this is Jim Peters. I'm here to introduce the Tuesday Forum video of a recent series of forums that we held. Throughout the country, in fact, throughout the world, gun violence is increasingly becoming a concern, but this particular session is really focusing more on gun violence in nightlife. So in June of 2022, we scheduled a regular Tuesday forum, but the attendance was so high that we scheduled a second session. So this is a summary of those two sessions. For those who are not familiar with the Sociable City Tuesday, it's a monthly event. It's the second Tuesday of the month, 10 o'clock Pacific time, and it's an open format where we consider everyone is an expert. We focus on recent trends and strategies, and we work towards consensus on key questions through breakout rooms with a facilitator. So the breakout rooms generally are limited to 5 or 6 people, and people have a half an hour to talk together on the different questions or topics of the day. And then we request one person to volunteer to report out from the group discussion. So for this particular forum, where we focused on gun violence, we had these questions. How is violence impacting your nightlife district? How do perceptions align or differ from reality of gun violence? What are your city's strategies to reduce risk from access to or use of guns? What policies have been put in place to prevent weapons from being brought inside social venues? How is gun violence being addressed in public spaces, on the streets of the social district? And how can your city encourage people to not leave guns in cars, which we've heard is a common problem in many cities, so they won't be stolen and used in crimes? So 89 participants from 35 cities and 26 states and provinces in 4 countries participated in the two June 2022 um, Tuesday forums. What's going to come up next is the videos of the individuals giving the reports from their particular breakout sessions. As you scroll through this list of participants, you can see they came from many different cities and represented many different perspectives. So we're here now to listen to the verbal presentations, but we also on our website have a summary of the discussions in a written format and a published format. So go back to our site, sociablecity.org, go to events and Tuesday forums, and you'll find a link to the written summary of this presentation. Thank you, and hope you enjoy the presentations by these individuals.
So we were, I think, group four, but we had like four key points that we really talked about. One was signage within the nightlife establishments, no guns allowed, policies on weapons, things like that. So security has to speak with the patron. They can just point to the signage and say, "I'm sorry, we don't allow this, or that inside in the establishment." We also talked about gathering different stakeholders, business improvement districts, the restaurants, the nightclubs, to come together to kind of put together a plan of action. We also talked about how the metal detectors and the wands are useful, but they could not be useful in the future, especially when it comes to the different types of guns that are being made, like plastics and ceramic type of guns, and how those wands probably wouldn't be able to detect those. But then we also talked about creating proactive patron safety campaigns and letting the patrons know that, barriers being put into the nightlife, or metal detectors and wands being used is more of a proactive approach, and that the city and the establishments are doing this to help with safety, and it's not something scary anymore.
So in our group, we clarified that a lot of the issues in taking place in social districts are actually not taking place inside social venues, except on rare occasions. They're actually doing a pretty good job of keeping weapons out. What is happening is when gun violence is happening out in public space, especially at closing time, and in many cities, this is really impacting tourism. Um, that guns are being are in the hands of just the wrong individuals, young people who shouldn't even have legal access to guns, who are not responsible gun owners. Weapons are being stolen from cars, being used for crimes. Um, Jonathan Hunter from the Raven Lounge mentioned this idea of venues trying to implement some bag, like having some policies around allowing some bags in versus no bags, having industry tags. It gets really tricky with industry members often needing changes of clothes and that sort of thing. Um, we talked about environmental strategies in Pittsburgh, having restricted parking, using more lighting to direct people to well-lit parking lots. And the chief from Pittsburgh brought up a great idea about enlisting outreach workers, citizens, even teachers to go out at night, people who are influential in young people's lives, instead of just police being out there to help de-escalate different situations, and really talking about how to teach young people to how to have fun, but to do it in a safe way.
So we had representatives from Minneapolis, which was interesting, Seattle, Philadelphia, and Columbia, South Carolina, and me from Burlington, Vermont. I think, to echo what I've heard, we all are facing a lot of the same problems with, a lack of adequate police force to do patrols at night, to deal with incidents, or even to investigate them. That people can do in venue security, but most of the activity was happening outside of the venue, but in the district. We talked a little bit from the solution standpoint on some things like, in Burlington, we've done a lot of recruitment and retention incentives. We've hired community service officers, but though those funds being made available, and they sometimes get passed by city council, sometimes not, don't seem to be moving the needle all that much. So we talked about, I think one thing that I just heard that we talked about too as a possible solution is to create, task force, or find a way to work together with police to try to kind of force multiply based on who's doing private security and who's doing, who the public folks that are in charge. Or is there a way that private security and nightclubs can work with the police to help increase efficacy of the group? And I would say that beyond that, we just really could have used another half hour, because the scope of the program is so large. I mean, the problem that it was just hard to figure out. We also talked a lot about this idea. There's, what can we inform the public relative to gun safety, and if they come to the district with a gun and leave it in their car, to make sure that it doesn't get stolen, because the reports out from several cities there was a lot of car break-ins specifically targeting or only focused on stealing guns.
I think we were talking about how it's affecting our community, and it's just not to say it's bad timing, but coming out of COVID. Oh, by the way, my group had all improvement district directors, so that I think lent a different flavor to the conversation too. And I am the nighttime economy manager for the city of Pittsburgh. But the return from COVID, it's been very difficult for office, getting office back into downtowns. And now with violence happening in nightlife, it was said, it's not like it's violence just happening in nightlife. Everybody's feeling it. They're afraid even when it's daytime, or, it's affecting office workers, it's affecting residents, it's affecting people that might normally come out in the early evening. So it's having a big ripple effect, and a big contributing factor is the media. And it was said, the positive reach of a negative story is 10 times that of a negative story is 10 times that of a positive story. So another contributing factor is the lack of staffing, not just in nightlife businesses, but in the city and the services, and everywhere we look, there's a reduction in staffing. So our response is inhibited as well. Some of the things that people are doing are, they're underwriting or finding funding for electronic ID systems, and then communicating to the public that those systems are in place and that they will be, they'll know who you are. They said there are, usually a handful of problem operators, and dealing with those that attract the gun violence to the area can help. Surface lots need to be managed, and they called them gun safes, basically glorified gun safes. Some people are using facade grants for lighting. We have an overlay parking district in Pittsburgh, in one of the areas that we use money for police cameras and other things like a clean team. But a contributing factor to things not being tamped down was brought up by one of the bids, that the DAs don't want to prosecute certain low-level crimes. And then, so police start losing motivation to do anything about those low-level bad behavior that escalate into other things. They're encouraging people to have business security cameras, and Lorena is going to pull together different facets that have security in her downtown, like a university, the transit center, big downtown businesses. And she says they work in silos and she wants to pull them together. We did something similar in Pittsburgh for downtown, and that worked really well. And we have a community forum tonight for one nightlife district that is going to bring together, I think, a lot of different perspectives that can help. And Zane talked about a late night safety committee that's led by their city council that controls nightlife workflow. And I would like him to comment on that a bit, because I don't think we got into enough detail on that.
Yeah, I think something you've always talked about is managing your nightlife, and really trying to have a prescribed workflow. In a group from, I know Michelle is on this and Joanne is on this, but really a group that has been working over the years from our baseline study that we did with RHI, kind of re-jump starting some of those key pillars, and creating, the economic times have changed with low staffing, really adapting to our economy today, not yesterday, but today into the future. So, really having the right people at the table to prescribe a workflow for late night and different initiatives and strategies. We'll be even testing out some of these other controlled access in Cincinnati. We're looking to try to do some of that as well. But, not to be able to go out and do small experiments and fail or succeed. You learn sometimes from your failures too. So get out there and get in front of it.
So our group touched on everything that all of you basically said in terms of actual gun violence. We had Seattle and we had Bloomington, Indiana, but we did have Sacramento in our group, Tina, who had just had gun violence right at the end of our summit. But it's kind of interesting, as we were talking, and Tina was saying that trying to get everybody back to where they were before COVID, it was brought up that the people, the students and the people that are actually going to these bars weren't of age before COVID. And so many of them just do not know how to behave. They've never been to a bar. They get they are argumentative when they think they should be patted down or go through a bar or something. They never learned how to behave in a bar. And I thought that was really interesting. The females don't want to be touched. And, it's like trying to get everyone back to before COVID, where, you kind of knew if you're going into a bar, there were certain rules, but then, passing that on to new bar owners. In some of the cities, there were new bars that didn't have that training, and there were issues with them. They did share in most of the cities, they had a list of the bad boys and girls, and that they would share with the new bar owners, but it took a while for them to get back into, just the proper behavior, just rules. They also thought it was confusing to do the whole message about leaving your guns in the car. It sort of sent the message, it's okay to bring it, but you have to leave it in the car. So I don't think any of the groups were going to be doing any of that. some cities, Tina and Sacramento had a very good buyback gun program. Their gas cards were offered, which gas at $5 a gallon or whatever it is in all the cities was something like that. Plainclothes police were being used in festivals, but we really just kind of generally talked on this group that's now going out learning how to stay late at night. It just doesn't know how to behave. And so they were challenging issues about how to retrain that, whether it's the signs inside the bars about guns or just general behavior. So that's pretty much what our committee was.
I guess we touched on everything that you guys touched on. Some of the concerns that we had is, if we put so many regulations on businesses, are we deterring businesses from staying because there's so much that they have to, follow on guidelines. And we were lucky to have Chuck in our room, which is actually a business owner or a club owner. So I kind of asked him a couple of questions in regards to the ID scanners. What did you think of that? Was it effective for your business? What was something that we could use? And then Nikki was even actually suggesting like bringing in statistics to kind of, because of the media always bringing up like the bad before the good, there's always this bad vibe put on downtowns. And so if they had statistics to be able to go over it, to be able to say, no, it's not just downtown, it's outside of downtown. Maybe it started here, maybe it didn't, and having that to kind of reassure other people I thought was actually a pretty good idea, because it impacts the image of the downtown itself. And there was this really cool idea she had these like lighting that I guess they get really, really bright at specific times, giving it like this like deterrent to stay in that area, and then obviously guiding them to leave to go to the parking lots. So those are pretty much things that we went over.
With our group, we really just was identifying the issues and came to realize everyone is facing the same struggles. We had DC, Philadelphia, Raleigh, North Carolina, and El Paso, Texas in our group. Some of the things we identified is that it's really like a lot of the issues are quality of life issues, which actually lead to more violence. Like it start off, like we said, with ATVs, and like it just riles up the crowd. How the kids are using TikTok to meet up. We just identified a lot of the problems. As we were ending in our group, Jean had spoke about RHI, Early Assistance. It's a program, Jean, I believe you said that, where it's you have good businesses that will pair up with problem businesses to try to help to get them just more compliant and more where they can help the community better. That's what I got from her. But some of the things as far as like just trying to identify and connect with the young folks, because it's a lot of times it's the young folks, and there's like so much lawlessness right now, and is trying to find a solution for that. We're just trying to figure out where to start, just getting them involved, maybe having a center for the kids to go to or something for them to do to deter them from going into the nightlife areas. So we really was just identifying what we're going through.
So I think like everybody else, we do not have enough officers in New Orleans, and we run supplemental police patrol programs, 2 of them, one using overtime NOPD and the other using non-NOPD but post-certified sheriff's deputies. And we have an 8 o'clock curfew in the French Quarter. So one, we don't have enough officers to handle the curfew. But the second is that, a lot of these kids are on the streets because they don't come from solid homes. They're either being put to work tap dancing and bucket drumming, or they're acting as lookouts for the drug dealers. And so we don't have a place to take them. We have one really wonderful group that is acting as a curfew center, but they don't have the ability to detain the children there. So, and if they're picked up for breaking curfew, they're taken to this really good nonprofit who can hold them there and try to contact their parents or their guardians. But the children don't have to stay there. They can walk out on their own. And so we have a real concern about how do we find a safe place to take these children when they're not coming from a quality home place, or they're being put to work on the streets by their guardians. So it's something that we're struggling with right now, is to find a solution to that. But it's very concerning to see these youth that are basically being abused and taken advantage of and put into a world of crime that they shouldn't be in. So even if you take them home, are you taking them to a safe place?
As Jim explained, we had 3 people, I'll say 2 innocent, murdered, and 11 people injured last Saturday night. So we're really trying to do 2 things. We're working with the police on one hand. You know, it's not just a police issue, but we're working with the police as well as we can. And one of the challenges we have is this kind of propensity to shut the entertainment district down. You know, there's right out of the gate, there's these easy answers that are not easy. But it's like, shut the entertainment district down at 8 o'clock or something. So we've been trying to push back that that's not good for businesses, is not good for the community. You know, we just need to find that something that's viable, that works, that makes a healthy, vibrant nightlife district. And trust me, I've talked to Jim, and I've been really drawing deep from the RHI playbook this whole week. We've also been working on some of the non-police stuff, you know, city services, whether it be lighting or trash or just public space management, you know, and really kind of focusing on that enforcement side as well. And trying to find that time right now where we pivot from not being tone deaf, but, you know, we need to keep the resiliency. We need to keep going, you know, and how do you not be tone deaf, but still promote the businesses that are out there, and create that image that you're a safe place, that you want people in the restaurants, you want people in your area, you know, not to be afraid. Because I'd say business was down anywhere from 30 to 60% this past weekend. You know, the weekend after, it's, you know, the street, there were a lot more police on the street than there were patrons. So that's probably a natural reaction that's not sustainable. So we need to kind of work our way back to that balance. One thing we mentioned in our group, though, is just real disrespect for law enforcement and police that's happening. And I see it all the time, and it's causing this kind of, wouldn't call it necessarily hesitancy to engage, but, you know, you got a situational analysis. You got to really pick your battles, you know, and pick your enforcement. And I think police are engaged in that constantly of, if I start this, is this going to escalate, or is this, you know, so in the absence of that, I think nuisance fills the void. So that's what I'd say. We're just trying to work our way through it.
And one of the things we noted was that police may not be the solution, just because for a lot of these events, there was a strong police presence, yet the activity still happened. So thinking that we're going to be able to address it simply by increasing law enforcement presence wouldn't work. We talked about things like community interrupters. So for example, in some cities, including Sacramento, we have people from the community who kind of work to address groups that might be engaged in gun violence or more prone to it, to try to see if we can address it that way. One of the things we talked about too, though, was just a change in people being able to understand conflict. And that really de-escalation training would be helpful, because what's happening is something that would maybe be a, you know, like Anne brought up, something that may have started just a fist fight in the past, suddenly escalates to gun violence, and then that gun violence become contagious, and then you just have a lot more shootings. And so really trying to figure out how you train people so that when there's that conflict, that you don't just automatically go to shooting someone. The other issue is dealing with staffing shortages, and the fact that police are short on staff, as well as a lot of venues. A lot of people that have security are noticing that their security guards are new. The security guards they had in the past have left, and so they're getting new folks. And so there's just a lot of different issues and things that are coming into play. So we see it as being, it needs to be a more holistic approach to addressing it, because it's not just saying we need more police, but it's really talking about training the people that have the events to understand how to do a de-escalation, but also looking at all the elements that might lead to it. And so if anybody in my group has anything else to add, but I think I covered it fairly well.
so we're really focusing on education. Me and my partner Travis there, like I said, we are in charge of the city of Edmonton's 3,700 plus alcohol sales venues. On the public safety compliance team, our team includes our police force, our Alberta Health Services, which deals with the food service. We have occupational health and safety, which deals with the employee aspect. We have our fire that comes in and does all the capacity and safety codes. We also work with our province, the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Commission. And so on our end, we tie all of our bars to a business license that allows them to operate through the city. And while it's not mandatory, we do recommend pat downs, patron scan, and metal detectors just to prevent weapons from coming into the venues. As well as our patron scan, we have an EPS member that will go on and put on certain gang members or people that have warrants out. And so it actually denies them right at the front with their security, whether they're new or not. They scan the ID and they're like, oh, sorry, the system won't let you in. If we let you in, it's a $6,000 ticket. So not going to let you in tonight, go away. So we've had a lot of education and bonus abilities there to keep out a lot of our problem people and our weapons, of course. On top of that, the province's Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Commission, when they give out a liquor license to any of these venues, their serving staff has to take a course. It's online and it's free of charge, and it's pro serve, and it stops over intoxication, over service, all these different things, as well as the security staff do not have to take it, but they offer a free of charge online program called Protect. And again, it talks about gang affiliation, how to properly de-escalate situations, how to appropriately remove someone from a scenario, certain points of dealing with that. And then these things that aren't actually conditions that they don't have to do, if either our team, the Alberta Gaming, Liquor, Alberta Health Services, fire, or Edmonton Police, if any of 5 of us have any issues with these bars, we can actually put the condition on their business license, which then says, prior to you screwing up, you didn't have to do this. Now that you've screwed up, you're going to have to do this, or you can't operate. We'll shut you down. And so we've been able to do the education, and we've been lucky to have the ability to crack down on it after a few months of education. Say, well, no, you've pushed it too far. This is now your punishment. So yeah.
So I think this has been mentioned before, but what we're really struggling with is the violence outside of our nightlife establishments on the street. In our downtown, parking is very accessible on street, parallel parking, and then also there are a number of garages that are a block, 2 blocks away. So if there is a altercation inside of a nightlife establishment, it's very easy to go out to your car, grab your weapon, and then come back, not necessarily go back inside the club, but on the sidewalk. And it's difficult to manage that. Not really sure what tools could help mitigate some of that. I'd love to see more education so that it's de-escalated inside of the establishment, but that does not seem to be in place currently. So we're really struggling with that sidewalk space and how to handle that. We've had officers on duty walking downtown for 3 months now since March, when there was a fatality on the sidewalk. The city's response was to just heavy-handed police presence and also mobile video surveillance cameras. They're large. They take up a parking space. There's 6 of them. Very unwelcoming. It's not a great look for our downtown, and it certainly is not a permanent response. The cameras are rented. The police have to go back to their normal duties at some point. So it feels like a very temporary fix to dealing with nightlife. So we're very interested in some sort of permanent program, ongoing solution, because we know this is not sustainable.
First of all, there was a gentleman named Nate from a unique policing entity that dealt with going in and dealing with organized crime and drugs, and his view was one that I haven't heard before, was going in and making the social life of these criminals unpopular. I mean, they go in, they check with them, they interview them, and it's one of the more unique ways that I've seen for preventing violence is the influence that they have on the violence that occurs, and it makes them socially not a presence that the owners want to have, but it's the people that control a great deal of the violence and how they go about it. And Canada has a lot more control of their nightlife than a lot of places or cities that don't have that ability, or the pressure that they can put on places is a lot greater than it is in the United States, from what I gathered. I really found him a very interesting aspect for controlling the opportunity of unwanted risk. They did geographical trespassing also, in the fact that they'll tell them, the guys, they can't come back into the venue, So it's another way of eliminating the opportunities of risks that are occurred by people that are gangsters. And I thought that was interesting. We talked about minors in controlling using the patron scan as a technique of reducing risk, that it helps to identify, and they can transmit that to other bars or restaurants for controlling the risk and dealing with people, and in the communication factor of that. So patron scan was an issue that came up 2 or 3 times as another way of reducing the opportunity of risk. The other thing was hookah bars. They said that hookah bars are open till like 8 in the morning, and they had they're not governed like the liquor bars. And he said that they had a lot of trouble with hookah bars, which is one thing I wasn't aware of. I don't know if you were aware of that, but that was one of the things that came out. Profiling, it came up, are you violating their social rights by profiling some of these people in the way that you interact with them? That was an interesting perspective. And let's see, events, cameras, smart cities, that the amount of cameras that they have outside and dealing with the smart cities in Louisville, and a few other accounts that came in with that, was really a great input, because it adds a way of accounting where the crime's being created, when it's being created, and they have the ability through the cameras to control a lot of the risk. Las Vegas, they had their background checks are very thorough, and they go back and check that a lot of the controls that they have are through their background checks and getting a license. And the public presence on sidewalk venues is one of the other things on how to control violence that occurs, or how to have safety in sidewalk venues, and how that's expanding, and the tort liability that's created when you bind all these restaurants together sometimes can be an issue too. So that was it.
Hi, this is Jim Peters again. I want to thank you for participating in this video presentation. Please go to our website, sociablecity.org, to learn more about the different programs and upcoming events that we have. Thanks again. Bye.